Okay. So 15-minute session today because I was on the wrong Zoom line, but thank you everyone for showing up and sticking around for so long. I love it. So this is the second conversation of what I'm calling the big aha, because I think like these huge insights, life-changing moments can come in just like the smallest little insight, something I read or a conversation I have that just shifts everything. So today I wanted to talk about 3 principles, and I'm curious who amongst you, if anyone, I'm guessing some are familiar with Sid Banks or Michael Neill and 3 principles. Not.
me.
Oh, awesome.
No, so the odd thing is, you know how the universe brings us together. Just yesterday, somebody introduces me to me, said, Bob, you got to find out about the 3 principles. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that.
Well, hang on.
Oh.
Maybe I've heard of it, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I have it right here in my notes from yesterday. Find out about the 3 principles.
Oh my God. Well, this is perfect timing then.
No
I love
kidding.
that. Okay, so we'll talk about it briefly. I could go over a little bit today if we get into some good conversation. If you guys can't, no worries at all, because I know we said 5:30 Eastern. So, and it's late where Ashley is. So,
I don't sleep much.
He looks all set back there for a
I
second.
know, no kidding. I wouldn't sleep either.
It's the set from the absolutely fabulous TV show. It's the backdrop. So you've got to do it quickly.
Yeah. I was just watching some clips the other day. It's hysterical.
It's a
I'm
good
sorry.
show. Actually, I'm not a English humor. I'm not as much. A couple things, but I'm not. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you've got to get educated.
I do. Well, Ashley, I'll lean to you. Okay. So this I read about more in through Michael Neill, who is a coach, who's author of Super Coach and Creating the Impossible and Inside Out Revolution, and this 3 principle thinking really started from a man named Sid Banks in the 1970s. He was a Scottish welder, and he was having this conversation. I think he was leaving a conference, and he was having a conversation with a therapist, and he was trying to convince this therapist that he was just an insecure mess, all the ways that he was insecure. And at a certain point, the therapist just responds and says, I've never heard such nonsense in my life. And for some reason, that moment shifted Sid, and he started to realize that insecurity isn't real. It's just a thought. And this shifted everything. So he started to, from there, identify 3 principles. And Michael Neill has done a lot of his work around this. And so I love the way that he kind of describes it in a lot of ways. And really the things that we all have in common as human beings, which is actually maybe a really great thing to be talking about right now in the state of the world. But the 3 things we all have in common. Number 1, we all think. And it sounds maybe a little bit absurd, but we all think, we all have thoughts, we all live in a world of thought. Oftentimes so much that those thoughts really truly become our reality. We think it's real. So we're all thinking people. Second is we all have consciousness. Hi, Steve, welcome. Sorry, we're just jumping in here to the 3 principles.
I'll just listen.
Okay. We'll listen and then we'll talk. So the 3 principles. So the first is that we all think. We are all made up, all these thoughts that are going on so often in our heads. And so many of us believe that world of thought is our reality. The second principle is that we all have consciousness. So we all think. We also have this ability to be aware, to really see, to understand. And then the third is that we all have an innate wisdom. And so this is our wisdom, our driver, we've all been born with it. We have a knowing inside of us, the ability to know, and it's been with us forever and maybe forevermore. We don't really know. I haven't been there yet. So, so this idea that this innate intelligence is fundamentally knowledge within us that drives us. And so the reason that this is important, the idea of these 3 principles, is that we have this, at least to me, right? And this is what we'll talk about a little bit today, is that we have this inner knowing, this wisdom within us. We have the ability to be aware of that and to get centered in touch with that, help us, guide us. However, so many of us, the grand majority of us, are so lost in the world of thought that we're unable to realize that wisdom most of the time. And we're so convinced, because of all those thoughts going on in our mind at all times, that is real and that is reality versus just a thought, that it creates our experience. So why I wanted to talk about this today is because I think once you truly start to kind of embrace this and recognize, it's almost like the Matrix, right? Like you start to realize like everything that we've constructed around us is kind of not real. The ways that we operate, the ways that we solve problems, make decisions, and for us coaches, even kind of respond to thought, is all kind of based in a flawed notion that thought is real. Okay, so now I'm going on a little bit of tangent. I'm going to try to reel it in. We are so distracted by thoughts that we think are real. This is the way that Michael Neill puts it. Basically, we have all these ideas. We think it's real, like, oh, I'm not attractive, or I just failed at that thing, or even, that was a great experience that I had, even positive thoughts that we have that we can't actually, that we don't recognize that they're not real. And he talks about it as like, you can't fit it in a wheelbarrow, right? Like I could put my glass in a wheelbarrow, so maybe it's real. But the idea that I failed the other day, or that, that there's a certain right or wrong way of doing things, or whatever, that a past experience is something that is still affecting me today, is all just imaginary. So I can keep going on about this, but I'm going to pause for a minute and I'm curious, like, what's coming up for anyone in this moment as I'm throwing some of these ideas out to you. I see Bob nodding his head a lot. Yeah.
Well, I mean, now it's no wonder this person said to me yesterday, you must read about this.
Yeah, love it.
I'm leaning much more into this. The thing about knowing, out of the intensive this past couple of weeks, I think we may have talked about this too, I'm finding out that I'm truly claircognizant. I know things without any explanation, without any evidence. I just know them, always, my entire life. And it's funny because, again, that the Litfin community has us doing brilliance sessions. What's your brilliance? And they sat down over the weekend to do my brilliance session, and it was about my knowing, my case from when I was a child all the way through to today. The things that I know without thought, they come to me without evidence, and I just believe them, and that is my true self. So, but I got so scared, as you know, if you've watched some of the videos, I get very scared. I get very frightened. I get very small talking about it. I withdrew my name from doing the brilliance session.
Wow.
And it's just no coincidence that you bring up the word knowing. Also, consciousness and thought. Has anybody been following Rupert Spira, Spira?
No.
If not, I would encourage you to listen to him.
Write it down.
He talked exactly about thought and consciousness, and how they exist. I won't say anything more. Just listen. It's very difficult to understand, but it seemed the way you said it, it's like, this is not everything. This is not how we live in the world. It changes everything. Well, it actually gives us a whole new way of living in the world.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what's so exciting about it.
Well, I love that you brought that up. And it's so like you're tapping into this inner wisdom that frankly, I've found it more difficult over the years to try to access, right? But we all have it in some way. And yet the thoughts are still always going to be there, right? They don't necessarily go away. But it's creating the awareness around it so that when that thought comes up for you of, ooh, maybe you shouldn't really be doing that thing, right? Like, ooh, maybe you're not ready, or whatever the thought has come up, that's That's not the inner wisdom talking. That's the thought process. Yeah.
But it's funny about that. I wrote it. You know, you're not supposed to write it. I had a script. I had to write the whole thing out just so I can get everything out onto paper. And it was, and quite frankly, it was brilliant. And I was ready. There's something telling me not to do it.
Oh, so maybe it was your inner wisdom.
It is. There's some sort of knowing that's saying don't do it for whatever reason. I believe it's because it's for a bigger audience.
Mm.
And I'm not ready to share it until I'm ready to share it.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, me too.
I love the idea of like using your inner wisdom to not do something, because I think of it in so many ways of like of doing the thing, right? Of like just getting out there, just trying it, taking the risk, or so for you, it was kind of the opposite.
Being told to sit still.
Yeah.
I'll
Just
let
wait. Just wait. Anything coming up for anyone else as I throw this out there?
I think for me, it's been the thing that Rich always says, and the thing I've really struggled with is to, in the medical work I've done, you know, we say to surgeons, work slower and you'll work quicker. Mm. So particularly when you're treating, you know, tissue for cancer with, you know, these devices, the slower you go, the more the machine can do its job. And one of the things that we talked a lot with Rich about is slowing down. You know, you slow down the questions, slow down when you're talking to your client. And I suppose really for this, during COVID, for me, I mean, I live alone, so it's been nearly 5 months and I still haven't touched anyone. I haven't hugged anyone or anything. And I've really learned to slow down through it. And I think when you slow down, some of the things that you've talked about, you stop over. I mean, you know me relatively well, and I overthink everything. And I've even got a T-shirt saying, "Hang on, let me overthink this." And I think when you slow down, that comes into perspective.
Yeah. Because
I have this self-talk that runs 472 scenarios of, why my girlfriend left me, or 463 of, what if I do this and it doesn't work out, Mm-hmm. But now I'm getting a lot more, if you don't try something, nothing will happen. Yeah. So, and if you try and it doesn't work out, then okay, you learn from that. So, it's trying to slow down, and for me, not overthink things. And it's been quite a.
It's a journey, right? It's a process.
Quite a struggle, really. Yeah.
So we're gonna. I'll extend 15 minutes since I started so late. If you guys are open, but if you have to drop, I totally understand at the same time.
I'll just get a bottle.
I know. I'm a little jealous of you.
There's nothing there. Look, Steve. Look.
I know. See, it's not real. You can't put it in a wheelbarrow. But I think what you're saying is so important, Ashley, because I think, and it's true, like so many, well, I've been guilty of it certainly, and so many clients come in looking for the answer and trying to figure it out. Like, how do I figure this out? Right? Like, what's the right way? What's the wrong way? And get so stuck in it. And I've noticed personally for myself, the moments when I just stop thinking about it, when I stop trying so hard, the biggest answers come to me, including career transition, right? Which is hard, right? Because I talk to clients and it's like, well, what's the next step that I'm supposed to be doing? Or how do I figure that out? And sometimes it's hard to be able to say, like, well, stop thinking about it. But we're bombarded, right? It's like if you walk into a room and it's just so much noise, or there's 6 televisions on, right? And it's just boom, 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 boom. No wonder we can't hear the wisdom, right? Because we're just, should I have done that? Or then this happened, or what should I do next? Or, whatever the thing is that's going on in our minds. So it's the learning to slow down, the learning to quiet. And I also, so when Ashley and Bob were talking about Rich, it's Rich Litvin, who's a coach that we're all fans of, I should say, or connected to in some way, for Steve and Robbie, who might not know Rich Litvin. But he says a lot of times, slow down to speed up. I've never thought about that from the mindset point as much, if that makes sense. I thought it more about it just like, all right, let me just focus more on certain things. And so that's a really great way to think about it.
Well, the other coincidence of all of this is I've been doing Facebook Lives every day. And
Oh yeah, I
today
saw
I
that.
talked about Rich Litvin talking about slowing down to speed up.
What's going
And
on, Bob?
and in my remember, I just did
My
a
hand's
The
there.
universe is telling you something. Yeah.
Disappearing.
but I just said the same thing. I couldn't understand it for anything. It drove me crazy because I'm the one who speeds up everything, like Ashley said. I mean, there's a million thoughts going on at one time, and I couldn't stop doing. I just couldn't stop doing. And then it hit me, and I stopped. And this is part of the slowing down too. And I started to focus. The word focus came up, and then also this thing of action for distraction. I was acting to distract myself from what I was really supposed to do, or really what I was afraid to do.
Yeah.
Now, I've been able to go deeper in myself because there's space, like you said, all that noise is gone. There's space to find out how Bob Russo exists in the world. And that allowed me to go deeper with my clients.
You know, I think this is maybe an offshoot, but I did a workshop on overwhelm this week for a group. And what came up is just that we're so busy all the time. We have so much going on all the time, and I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this. And we just think we have to keep doing. And really what we're doing is just exhausting ourselves and not being able to actually just focus on the things that matter. And it also makes me think of that, I don't know if I should, I'm sure I've shared this, but that Warren Buffett story where he's talking to his pilot. I talk about this all the time. And he says, well, I never really thought about your career and what you want for your career. So make a list of the things that are most important to your career. So he writes out a list of 25 things that are most important things from his career. And Warren Buffett says, great, what are the top 5? And so he picks the top 5. And then he says, well, what are you going to do with the other 20? He's like, well, I'll fit them in on the side or on the weekend or when I can. And he says, those 20 are your avoid at all costs list. Bye, Ravi. Nice to see you. And the reason being, right, all of those other things we're using as a distraction towards the things that we core truly want. I think it was our brain is out there for our survival to keep us safe. So it's let's just throw all this stuff in so that we don't do anything weird and wild, right? We'll just kind of keep so distracted that we can't really focus on the big dreams, the stuff that we really.
Well, one of the things that I've been doing every day, well, I'm doing open water swimming now the lake's open, but I've been walking for an hour and a half every day. And it's been strange because I've always made lists every day of things to do, and I've got to do this before I do this, before I do this. But because it's only psychologically, because of COVID, there's no barrier anymore. Some days I go, I just want to lay on the sofa for a couple of hours and watch Netflix. But I don't feel guilty about it because I still do the work I'm doing. And I read Steve Kotler from the Flow Genome Project. He said that sometimes that we get things back to front. We do work and get stressed, then we go for a walk to overcome that. Well, why don't we go for a walk so we don't get stressed, and we can think more clearly and come back with a clearer mind?
Yeah.
And that really got me. I think that came out about a week ago, and I'm thinking, well, that's really kind of what's been going on with me. Because there's no time frame as such, I've been going for a walk just when the weather was nice and gone out, and just the head's going around, and you get back and I can do 2 hours of the stuff I need to do and feel really unstressed about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I've done a tick box. It feels like I've done a humanistic thing, even though it is a tick box.
Well, that's what we don't recognize, is that the active recovery that is essential, right? That was the overwhelm. It was the sympathetic nerve is our fight or flight, right? That's our we got to go stress. And then the parasympathetic is we also have to care for that, which is the active recovery, which isn't necessarily just scroll through social media and think that we're relaxing, but we're not. It's the walk or the meditation or just the quiet, right? Or the nap. right? Because we need sleep. Like these are functions of our that we require as human beings. So I love that. Caring for that as much as everything else on the list is just as important.
Yeah.
So what would you do with this information, right? So say that thoughts truly weren't real, which they're not, right? This is, I do believe they're not. They're things that we choose to put energy and into or not. What kind of blows me away too is this takes away the idea that you have to affirm, that you have to turn a negative thought into a positive thought. Because if it's just a thought, you don't have to change it. You can just recognize it, be like, oh, there it is over there, you know, and move about your business. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that's perfect.
It's easier said than done, though.
100%, right? Like if this were all easy, then we'd all be just.
Because we are our thought, right? We are our thought. And so.
Well, we have thought.
Yeah, some people say the opposite. The thoughts are the real thing. So.
Oh, you think that, or you've thought that?
If you study philosophy, I mean, it's a 50-50 proposition to philosophers over the years. So it's hard to, I mean, I'm not taking a side in this case. I'm not going to argue with you three about this.
No, please. I mean, this is a conversation.
I certainly haven't settled upon it either, but
yeah,
that's one of the oldest debates in philosophy is the reality of, is it all mind, or whether it's our mind or some bigger mind we're all part of, or is it materiality or 50-50 or whatever. So yeah, I mean, thoughts have a reality, just like a fictional character has a reality in a sense. If you want to give it reality, you're right. We can have power over our thoughts and, you know, do with them what we will. That's, I guess, what we're sort of trying to get at today, right? Just like they might be helpful in some ways, but they're not something we should allow to bind ourselves, especially, you know, past thoughts, past memories, whatever, all these different ways.
Future worry.
Break free of them, or just use them in certain ways as opposed to be weighted down by them.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a really interesting point, Steve. And I think that's where, and I think like this idea of the three principles is that there is a mind, which I think, to what you're saying, or philosophers say, could be the reality, quote unquote, right? And there is our awareness. And then there, on top of that, are all these thoughts that are kind of like going on all the time. And so it's the sense of quieting those. And maybe it's thinking versus thought, right? Like maybe it's the thinking that's going on all the time. So it's quieting the thinking so that you can actually come back to center, to that wisdom, the mind.
Yeah, the stream of consciousness is constantly flowing. And if you get caught up in that, like kind of everyone was saying, if you just get caught up and don't do anything, you just ponder everything or just react to everything that's coming at you without taking any direction or slowing down, like you were saying, that can lead to not doing much other than worrying, basically.
which I do a lot of, I must admit. But isn't it sort of maybe partly a survival instinct that we're running future scenarios to know how to protect ourselves? So, you know, if you're going to be speaking at a Congress, you know, you're thinking, which I've done a number of times over in the past, you know, what if I get that awkward question I can't answer? What if I stand up there and, you know, I freeze? What if? That's all part of a preparation, in a way, a preparation for doing a good TED talk, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but how much of that then becomes a thought that can be not a damage, but that can be negative, as opposed to preparing you. You know,
you can't sleep.
That's where it's the preparation versus the worry, right? Like, because the worry is a future state versus, okay, what am I doing now in this present moment, right? If you've read Eckhart Tolle at all, right? Like, it's the present is all that we have. And so what's the thing that I'm focusing on? It was interesting. I actually watched something with Michael Neill talking, because this is like the foundation, right? And then he builds off of it. How does this relate to worry? How does this relate to fear? And when he talks about worry, he says, you know, a lot of people that he's worked with around worry are convinced that they need the worry to keep them safe, right? Like, I need to be worried about this or else. But I remember reading this story, and it was The Power of Positive Thinking, which is an oldie, right? Like, and this guy talks about how he was married, he had this wonderful marriage, and he was always worried though that something awful would happen, right? His wife would die in a car crash or something terrible. He was just worried about all the time, right? And then years later, his wife actually did die in a car crash. And he thought, what was the use of all that worry?
Mm.
I just think that's
See, I'd be thinking, did
really
I do
impactful.
that? that's,
Yep.
that's what I'd be
Did I
thinking.
create it?
Was it me worrying about it that
My
made it?
thought.
But the other way of looking at that is, what if I go to Congress and I don't know the answer? What if that was perfect?
Mm.
Yeah.
What if that was meant to be perfect?
Yeah.
Everything happens is perfect. I'm perfect, and everything that happens. What if that was your thought?
Me too.
You
Yeah.
you are not perfect. You are ideal.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, Bob.
Seriously, just that's the new thought.
Yeah.
I am perfect. Because I exist, I am perfect. And because I exist, I'm worth. And I exist only because I have consciousness.
Mm.
That's the, yeah.
And
Aware.
everything that happens is perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I am enough is what I've been hearing a lot of.
I'm enough.
Perfect is a little beyond that, I suppose, in some ways. So,
Yeah. Well, but that's a much better way of putting it. I'm enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. If Ashley's constantly weren't running through all these scenarios, what if he is asked a question he's not quite prepared for? What is the worst that could happen? I guess that's another way people think about it.
I've got good techniques for that now. So what do you think? I had I presented at a big congress in Vancouver a long time ago to a load of doctors, and I had one guy who just knew it all, and he was asking questions deliberately to try and embarrass and humiliate me. And I said, well, look, you're clearly an expert on this. I'm happy for you if you want to stand up and share your ideas. He didn't want to do that.
You didn't want
and
to.
then, and then a bunch of doctors came to me after. They said, Ashley, he's always doing this, and you dealt with that absolutely superbly. So yeah, I think for me, I over prepare everything, and then you don't get things. Well, you don't get things done. So now I'm thinking, do enough that triggers the next thing, that triggers the next thing. And if you're in a situation like that where I do lots of sales training with people, and they say, well, what if you have a surgeon that does this? What do you do? And I say, well, ask a question. You don't. And now I've got my sales guys asking surgeons questions, because sometimes they'll just throw something out just to be awkward. But if you turn it around and say, well, what would happen if this? What would happen if that? What would you like to have happen? What's the best scenario for you and the patient? And then it just diffuses all that. So I've learned those techniques, but it still doesn't stop me for a big thing, just sort of over preparing.
It makes sense. Look, it's there's a it's a perfectionist trait, right? Like that's it has to be absolutely perfect or not. But I was talking with a client about that recently, actually, and like there's the idea that I'm prepared. He used a soccer analogy, right? He's like, meanwhile, the team has already won and they've left the field. They're at the pub, right? And I'm still putting my shoes on, right? Because I had to get so ready. So Sheryl Sandberg talks about it. It's like, what's the marginal difference that perfecting that's going to be, right? Like if I got 90% there, versus like all this extra work that I'm going to put in, what's the little bit, extra, what's the value of that and to whom? So anyway, I know we're at kind of at 30 minutes. I could go on about this stuff forever.
Thank you.
But I don't know if you have any kind of like thoughts or takeaways that you want to throw out, or I'm so thrilled that you guys are here and stuck around during my 15 minutes of sitting by myself on Zoom.
Well, I'm really not here.
Oh, that's right.
No, and I really love what Steve said. It's not that I'm perfect. I'm enough. That's a good way to put it. I love
I like that. Yeah, I like
preparing and the preparing and the preparing. It made me think of, what am I preparing for? I have no idea what the future is. If I am enough, I will be ready at the moment.
That's what this is all about. That wisdom of knowing.
I'm not supposed, right.
When I'm ready, I will know when I'm ready, and I will know what to do. If we trust that, what could happen?
I cannot predict the future, so I cannot prepare for the future.
I love it.
Woo.
That's
If I
big,
could,
Bob.
And the one last thing I want to share, though, it's not easy. I've been doing it since May. And the first thing I do actually is take that time. It's white space, right? She talks about build in the white space. From 6 in the morning till 8 in the morning, I sit outside and I listen to the birds. No music, no books, no internet, no nothing. Don't think you're doing nothing when you're doing something. Just sit there and imagine what the world is like when your ego is not present.
Yeah.
Did you just say 6 o'clock in the morning?
You do you, Ashley. You don't. Bob's way might not be your way. And I'm thinking of my like lovely but chatty neighbor. I'm like, is that the word? But like, yeah, but we'll figure it out for ourselves.
Because I build in that recurring time
Yeah.
first, and then the rest of the day is perfect. It's like
Huge.
breakfast. You can't go without breakfast, kind of. You need that fuel.
It's vital. It's a non-negotiable. I love it. Okay.
Love meeting you guys.
This is so great. Thank you guys for joining.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Yeah, nice to
Lovely to see you.
guys dinner next time.
Always a pleasure. All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys soon, I
See you
hope.
next week.
All right. Awesome. Bye.
Ciao. Bye, guys. Stay safe.
You
Yeah.
too.